Satellites? A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.
Welcome, Satellite Haiku.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was funny to when I shared with you that I went to a Halloween party and someone said, "Oh, I listened to every episode of Satellite Haiku." And
I know, it's funny. That's cool.
yeah, I actually like to listen to it in the car when I'm driving around town.
But you know how, like, at the end of when you're listening to a podcast, right? And at the end, or a YouTube video, like, there's always the, like and subscribe. They always have to say that, right?
Yeah,
Like, if you like what we're doing, like it, subscribe it, share it, right?
Yeah.
So there's people put work into, like, making sure that the audience is helping, right?
Yeah.
Give us a review. It really makes a difference, right? You know what I mean? So that's what, like, if you are a content creator, an aspiring content creator or influencer or whatever trying to use these platforms, like, you do there's a certain amount of labor you personally put into kind of marketing or, like, just nudging people to help, right? To, like, amplify you, right?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't know, but you might.
We don't do that.
You went viral with your.
Yeah, but that was accidental. Like, that was pure accident. But what I'm saying is, like, if I was more like other people on the internet trying to be internet people, I would have, like, taken advantage of that moment and, like, try to, this went viral. I got to make 3 more. I got to make 3 per day, right? I got to boost them somehow. I got to tell people about them.
Yeah.
Right. And
you'd have to take on sponsors because you'd be approached immediately by shoe companies. And,
yeah, right.
Like men's.
And so, yeah, not for my content. But anyway, what I was saying the other week was that, like, nobody we know in our circles of people behave like normal internet. Like, none of the people like and subscribe and share and, like, what normal internet travelers do. Like, the people we know in real life don't do any, like, they're traveling the internet and they're reading stuff and watching stuff, but none of them do the other parts where they're like, oh, I really like this guy, let me boost him a little bit, right? You know what I mean? For anybody that they follow, right? I do that, but, like, I'm a weird alien in our circles of people. Like, I do the stuff that I have a friend right now on who's trying. He has a kind of a life coach business, I guess.
Yeah.
He was a tech worker for a while, and so he's out there trying to do his thing, and I think he's running into the same frustration. It's like he's trying to get the people he knows in real life to kind of, like, help amplify what he's doing.
Isn't that?
And we just have a circle of friends that just don't do that.
And
it's
maybe,
very weird.
And I'm going to play the devil's advocate for a second and say, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's why we hang with those people, because they're not, like, glued to their, like, they're not.
No, but, like, I don't think it's a matter of how much time we spend on these platforms, because I think we're spending not that much less time than a lot of people. We just don't press that button to, like, amplify that thing that other people, we don't tell people about that thing that much. You know what I mean? It's not that we're not on the internet. We are. We're on the internet a lot. A lot of us are.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a great question. Honestly, I really don't know the answer. And back to the thing about the life coach thing, I remember thinking there was a point at which I thought, wow, I've done a lot of therapy and I wanted to write a self-help book to kind of gather up all the little nuggets of wisdom that I learned, what I would say, recovering from the grief of my divorce, an unexpected divorce. So that was, like, to me, like, a very practical, kind of like, what is it? What color is your parachute? Or someone like that, right? So I haven't done it. I have, like, 120 pages of notes that I took with a therapist.
Yeah.
And I have a pretty good outline for what it would be. But at the end of the day, the thing that stops me from doing it is I feel like I haven't figured it out. Like, I'm not.
Isn't that the funny thing about that's the paradox of wisdom, right? Like, I was saying this the last time I had any interaction with a therapist who I really appreciated, who really I felt like was helping me, because I had one since then who I don't think helped me at all. But I remember saying to this woman, like, I just remember sort of it dawning on me that, like, I am just now, like there have been many phases of my life where I felt like, oh, and now I'm starting to get it, right? Now I'm starting to figure out
Yeah.
this whole
Yeah.
thing, like how I'm supposed to exist in this world, right? And how we are and how to be a better version of myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I just like every time I learn, like every time I pass through another kind of gate to the next level of wisdom, I feel like I'm just starting again. Like, oh, now I'm starting to get it.
Right. You now
Like,
know what
and then you go through this arc where like, I think I'm figuring it out. And then like you pass through another epiphany and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just starting to figure it out.
Right, right. Yeah, it's funny if I were to take but remember that Designing Your Life book that we talked about in a previous episode? And there was that exercise where you have 4 columns like work, love, health, and play.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea was you're supposed to kind of like imagine, it's like doing those vision boards where you're like, imagine, make a list of all the things that you'd like to achieve in your life, kind of bucket list under those categories. And then you were meant to rank them at the present state and then do pilot projects and rank them after the pilot projects and see if you could improve. Basically, it was a very scientific approach to improving your quote unquote, like your life, right? So the truth is like I guess if I were to map out, there are certain categories there where I feel like I've dialed it. Like I feel like one of the kind of, I would be, for instance, if I had a problem in my marriage or something, I feel like I've learned to live alone. Like I know I can be happy living alone. It would not be devastating to me. And I really love being married. I love my wife. I love being partnered. And but I feel like if someone came to me, a very common thing is younger people will be like, oh, destroyed by a breakup, like someone dumps them and they feel like, oh, I'm not worthy, but I feel like I've gone through that fire and like Gandalf like came out in the white coat,
Yeah.
But then when it comes to like, when we were talking about, for instance, like jobs, I feel like I've kind of gone through the corporate fire and I know what I don't like about corporate life.
Yeah.
But I haven't sort of figured out how to, I had a therapist once who said.
Yeah, but even back to your first one, like you say that, right? Like, and I sort of feel the same way, but it's entirely possible that a breakup would come into my life and it would still floor me. And I think I am in the place that you just described as well, right? But like life makes you learn new things about yourself all the time.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure.
So there's a non-zero chance that you're totally wrong about that.
Oh sure,
that thing about yourself, which is the other. That's what I'm saying. It's like and so when you look back at the sort of the notes you wrote, and I kind of did something similar where I thought, I keep a journal, and I thought, some of the stuff in this journal is just, kind of things I've figured out about life, and maybe it'll help my kids or whatever, right? Like if they read this, and so I sort of like started to write through that lens a little bit, like little nuggets of wisdom. Life lessons for my children kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But I have the same perspective on it that you kind of just described, which is like, maybe I actually have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like the wiser I get,
right,
the more I question whether I actually get it at all. You know what I mean? That's the paradox I'm talking about. The wiser you get, the more you're like, I don't fucking know.
This is a good analogy where, so as an artist, years ago, I was asked there was a guy in town who produced a show called You Become the Drummer. And he would have the entire audience, he'd pass out little instruments, little like
nice.
shakers and stuff. And then he would build like this massive, he was an African dance dude and he had African dancers on stage. And they asked me, it was really cool, like, cause he was a corporate team building guy. He had a business that did that. But then he wanted to do this kind of literally like a theater show. He sold tickets and people came. So he asked me, would I do a video, video DJ projection, like project images on this big screen behind them. And I was like, I could make you a bunch of loops and then we'll hit play. And it'll just, run as like decoration, like a moving backdrop,
Yeah.
That's what I committed to do. And then I downloaded some like freeware software, bought some DJ software, started playing around with it. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. Like I can do this layering thing where it's like on the fly, I'm making like double exposures and weird designs with kaleidoscope filters and stuff. And so I ended up getting looped into doing it live during the performances. And this was back in the days when like my hard drive was like a spinny drive and I had to put it on like ice packs, like to keep it from, because it was like, it was like, so there was no SSD drive. And
You're pushing it to its limits.
Totally, right. And it was amazing that I could actually do it. But this woman, one of the dancers, who was a friend of mine, she came up to me and she goes, "Wow, you're a wizard." And because I'm, and I said, "Well, I don't feel like a wizard. I just poke at the thing until something cool comes out, and then I'm like impressed,
Yeah, yeah.
And she goes, "But that's what wizards do." Like, and I was like, it occurred to me that I was like, you don't feel like a wizard, you act like a wizard because you're standing in uncertainty and you don't know how to do it, but you just kind of poke at it until something cool comes out. And I was like, so in some ways, like when you are being a wizard, it won't feel like a wizard.
Yeah, that's the paradox.
That's kind of
paradox of wizardry, paradox of wisdom.
Of wisdom, of wizardry.
I think that you hit on something else there too, which is that like there's a kind of temperament that I think is really helpful in life that I wish I had more of, which is just a willingness to poke on things. It kind of feeds into that like willingness to just fail and do bad and produce bad work, right? And that sort of that other issue that we've talked about where in order to kind of like become good at whatever work you're trying to produce, right? Writing or music or whatever, you have to, at first, way before you become good at making anything, you're good at recognizing, you're able to recognize what's good. And so you're able to recognize that what you are making is not good. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you have to we talked about this, you have to push through you have to be willing to make stuff that's not good, that you recognize is not good. And not only that, there's nothing that guarantees that it will ever be good. Like in that moment when you make that thing and you go, okay, it sucks. I had this vision in my head and it's good in my head, but when I made it, it was bad. So something happened between my head and making it that made it not good, or there's some deficit there. And there's nothing about that process there's nothing that tells you in that moment that like, oh, if I keep doing this, I'll get better. So you just have to make yourself keep doing it, even though it's bad, and there's nothing about the process that tells you can get better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, especially when it comes to making art or music or something that,
But it's that poking thing you just described, sort of like that. It's that what you did. Like if you have an open mind and an open heart, if you keep poking at the buttons or whatever, stuff will happen and you go, oh, that was cool, right? Like I can use that.
Yeah. I did it. This was like 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And I did it recently for a woman that I had done, a musician I had done a music video for. And she said, "Hey, will you come?" And so I said, "Yeah, I'll project on the wall behind the band,
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was going to, and there's new software and it's kind of, my laptop is obviously much better, And my trick, I just get a folder of about 20 clips. And then I kind of duplicate the folder and I just start dragging things on top of each other. And then I use a slider to see if something cool happens. And so you do, it's really like, when you were...
I mean, you that's kind of your process with painting and visual art too. You layer stuff
and see
and you're just like, what if I just like put this layer on? Well, I don't love it, but what if I fuck up that layer now?
Exactly.
Oh, that's better.
No, exactly. And there's like filters, like you can, for instance, there's glitch things you can do. You can change the direction.
But you like really lich. I think like I sort of tend toward minimal. Like my taste is minimalist. Yours is more maximalist, I think, in terms of just like those layers of richness and all that texture. Like you're more maximalist about that stuff way more than I am. Like my tendency is like, how little can I do? Like if I do too much, then it sucks, right? You know what I mean? You're like, I could keep going. If it sucks, I'll just add more.
Well,
that's and then I'll kind of erase this and I'll blend it and I'll use this effect, and which I think is great. I think my sort of taste with stuff is more minimal, and so that I have a big resistance to working like that.
In my artist statement, I came up with a term that I thought felt really captured the process, which was it was a process of stumbling and recovery and the celebration of happy accidents.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, if I made a mark that I thought was, wow, that was just so ugly and it was just in the wrong place. I actually like that when you cover it over, sort of repair it. There's this history of repair, like of breaking things and then repairing them.
I mean, it's definitely that's your style, and it feeds. I mean, you love the effect, but you also love that process. You love both of those things.
I do. It's true, and I wonder.
But like in writing, like there's a lot of this. There's a school of writing that goes, just brain dump, right, and then edit it down to what you like, right.
Right.
That's hard for me. Like I like to read what I've written and then come up with the best next thing. There's writers that do. George Saunders is an example of that. Like he's constantly like, it takes him so long to write a short story because he's like, what's the right next sentence? And what's the right next sentence after that? And what's the right next sentence? And then he edits, but even getting each of those sentences, he's sort of just, all that editing is already happening, and then it comes out into something, and then more editing happens. But like that's a little bit more like the process I gravitate towards. Like if I have a paintbrush in my hand, it's like, what is the right thing to touch this canvas right now? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're just like, let me just attack it and then fix it, and then that fix did something interesting. Let me attack it this way. That's weird. Oh, but what if I do this? Okay, cool. Right?
Yeah. It is. It's true. I'm painting with my wife a painting. It was fun to sort of show her the process and teach her sort of the techniques, the craft of it.
Yeah.
And we're working on a piece for her brother as a gift, and we went to look at some of the older pieces that I did years ago that are in the kitchen or the living room. And there is a simplicity to them. Like this one has like 89 layers and those ones have 7, And I think in the process of trying to teach her how to do it, I think we got way too complex. Like I think if I was doing it by myself, I wouldn't necessarily have ended up with 89 layers. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I look at it and I think like, wow, and it even got really dark and kind of brooding, and we didn't want that, so we had to kind of go back and try to repair that. And I don't know that we succeeded, but again, like I've never painted a painting with someone.
Yeah.
So like it's a process, like I can't, certainly, that's new for me. And then anyway, we'll see how it comes out. Like I'm not sure, like I'm not ready to throw it away, and I'm also not completely happy with it, but for a variety of reasons. But
I remember years ago, we talked about that book project you made where you were taking contributions from a lot of people and compiling it into like an art book, right?
Yeah.
And I had something that I was going to contribute, and it was a piece of writing, right? And I thought, well, I got to do something with this. I got to use it as inspiration somehow for a page in this book. And I was trying to, this kind of illustrates like a little bit of the difference of how you and I approach that kind of opportunity, right? Like, so I was struggling with like, what do I do with this piece of writing? I'm gonna draw something or paint something inspired by it, or I'm gonna construct something somehow. And you were like, why don't you just crumple it up and then flatten it out again? I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, and then you were like, then you could dip it in some like tea or something.
I said this? I don't remember
saying
this.
Yeah. And so your thing was just like, just start doing something with it, with the thing in your hand. Don't try to like, don't like agonize over how to do the right thing that's inspired by it or whatever. Just like crumple it up, dip it in this thing, flatten it out, glue it in there. Maybe then something will come to you, right? That's kind of like your approach, right? And so,
as a child, did you ever make pirate maps?
Yeah.
Because you had to like burn the edges and like crumple it all up, and it had to look like, that's where I kind of think I got it from, is that as a child making pirate maps, trying to make it look old,
Right. It's just funny, It just wouldn't have occurred to me to just like take the thing in my hand and just fuck it up.
one of my professors at the U of A, I took a few graduate classes with these three professors that were yeah, and one of them, Judith Golden, I think, rest in peace. I believe she passed away. She was retiring and she wanted me to take over her experimental color class. And for a variety of reasons, like I went into interview and they said, the U of A had said, you don't have a full MFA. You've been studying, I had a lot of credits, but I didn't have an MFA. And they go, that's the terminal degree in this field, and you need the terminal degree to be a professor here. Which, by the way, that actually made me think of, and I'll come back to the story about the art thing, but it made me think that like the president of the United States should have a terminal degree in political science, constitutional law, or law. Like, I just think that kind of makes sense that like, if I had to have a terminal degree in fine art to be a professor of fine art, shouldn't the president of the United States have a PhD, a doctor of jurisprudence or political science or history, something that is, you know what I mean? It's kind of a good question.
Yeah. I mean,
because it is the highest office in the land.
I don't quite agree. I mean, I sort of feel like there are enough, I don't know. What should happen is voters should be somehow the process should lead toward voters selecting the right person who has
that's a good,
the right qualifications. And that's tough.
Well, like
we have the most extreme version of that gone wrong right now that we've ever had.
And the other, for instance, so like for instance, federal judges have a code of ethics that they're required to follow, but the Supreme Court doesn't.
Yeah.
Like that seems like a mistake. Like shouldn't they all follow the same federal judge code of ethics? Like it just seems
they should.
So dumb.
And I mean, like, here we go again. But I mean, when you think of just like what the job of Congress and the court is, like I don't think anyone ever anticipated that the court and the Congress would just completely abdicate the jobs that they are elected to do. Like they're literally just allowing and so you just have to wonder. You'd think like some of the Republicans in Congress would be thinking that like, hey, some of these institutions that are just being bulldozed and some of these norms that are just being bulldozed and just some of the civil society guardrails that are being bulldozed right now, like that is not in the long, like there's no gain in short-term power that's worth what even Republican congressman, am going to end up losing in the long term because of all that. You know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah, no, it's true.
And so you just think it's just weird that they're willing to allow all of that to be completely bulldozed. They are the only ones who can stop it really right now. And they've just completely, and the courts as well. Like the way that the Supreme Court has been deciding things with its emergency docket and stuff like that to just basically open the highway to the administration without even allowing the normal court process to happen. And the way they're putting stays on injunctions and things like that. So like even when courts rule like, hey, this is crazy, we should hit the brakes. And the Supreme Court's like, yeah, we're not sure if it's crazy, but in the meantime, we'll just let it keep going. So we're just going to stay that injunction and not decide anything. You know, it might be crazy, but like, you know, we're not going to stop it at least.
I heard from historians
it's just weird
that the founding fathers actually wrote about the two things that they didn't anticipate. They thought that most people, especially people with a little bit of power, would want to keep it. They thought that people were narcissistic enough, especially ones who would run for an office, that they wouldn't want to give up power. Like if you were third in line to the presidency, if you were the Speaker of the House, you'd be like, fuck you, man, I have a lot of fucking power. Like I hold the purse strings and don't you talk to me like that. Like they thought that would just kind of keep everything in check. And that's what didn't happen, at least now. And it's kind of surprising. And the other one was they didn't anticipate the rise of two parties. They thought that people wouldn't really, they kind of imagined we'd all be independents and we'd kind of vote on issues.
Which is ironic because what they built was something that pretty well optimized for the rise of two parties.
Yeah.
like what they designed. Because when you look at like the parliamentary system that exists in places, those places don't have two parties, two
Right.
dominant parties.
Right. They have to
In
form
the UK,
coalitions.
or the UK does, but
Germany,
even the UK
Israel.
didn't at one
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And Israel, like you have to form coalitions. Like sometimes you end
Yeah,
up
there's
with
coalitions that you have in a parliamentary system. You
ultra
have these,
conservatives and Arab party are like working
right. You
together.
have 5 or 6 parties, and you have to figure out how to like form a coalition to pass anything, right?
Yeah.
And
which
they
could
took what we had, and what the British had, and they sort of found I think a better way in the end.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah.
I mean, I do see that, for instance, one of the things people like voters hate is the sort of gridlock. They call it like gridlock in Washington. And you can see how like the coalition building might end up with this very, very centrist, everything is centrist. Like there's no, because
Right. And then you can see how what's happening now is a furious reaction to that.
yes,
Right?
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, because it's like, I don't know. There was a writer whose work I follow that I thought she kind of framed. She wrote a piece a few weeks, maybe a couple months ago, and when federal troops were being first deployed in D.C. before they'd gone to other cities, and so a lot of people were rightly pointing to that and saying this is unconstitutional. This is authoritarianism. This is fascism. This is not what should happen in America, right? Like federal troops being deployed into cities, right? Against the will of the people who run those cities, who live in those cities. And sort of her take on it was like, yes, that's all true. And so why would anyone say yay to that, right? Like, why would anyone sort of raise their fist and cheer for that other than like maybe, outside of the lazy, hey, it's a cult of Donald Trump explanation? Like what else is sort of underneath that? And her take was kind of like comparing sort of like the centrist approach to the problems of homelessness and crime. Say, like if you walk through a city and you see just squalor in parts of a city. Now, like there's no city that is living in squalor and crime to the level that Republicans like to sort of like claim on Fox News and sort of pretend that, these are hellholes, Chicago and in San Francisco and stuff. But there is, like, if I walk around San Francisco, there's way too many homeless people like living in squalor, and there's a lot of systemic reasons why that is the case, right? And so this sort of the approach, obviously the approach to homelessness has not worked for however many years, decades, right? Like here we are with this terrible acute homeless problem and drug problem and all that. And so, you can say, well, gridlock and blah, blah, blah. And there's sort of like technocratic approaches to it. But the answer of the centrists and even the left is kind of like, well, we're working on it. It's bad, but we're doing things, right? But when it doesn't kind of pass the eye test, when you walk in and you see it and you're like, they're doing things, but why is it still this bad, right? And so like there's this cycle of doing things, and then there's like pushback on the cycle, and there's like those initiatives aren't funded well enough, and then when they do get funded, there's corruption and the money gets spent badly and incompetence, and right? And so there's this cycle that's gone on for decades where just like those problems are still there, and in fact, they're even worse than they were 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so people look at that and go, and then Donald Trump rolls out the National Guard. And it's not that necessarily people go, this is the right solution. It's just kind of like the proportion to the solution at least meets people's eye test. Like somebody's doing something, so like they're doing something stupid that won't work, but it's like it's a big move. It's an attempt to solve the problem that feels proportional to the way the problem seems to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like if there was a leftist or centrist attack on that problem that felt like, oh, that's a serious attempt to solve it, that might actually work. But that's not, we're not seeing that, right? Like what we see is just the problem just sort of keeps getting worse, and there's a lot of talk about it, and maybe there's a little progress, and then and then it declines again, and there's, you know what I mean? So people look at the National Guard. It's like there's a phrase, bias toward action, and Trump has a bias towards action, and it's insane action, and it's harmful action, and it's counterproductive, and it's too expensive, and it's totally the wrong solution. But people look at that and go, at least somebody's doing something big,
not just sitting
for
there,
this big problem. Nobody else has done anything, tried to do anything big
That's
to
a really
solve
good
it.
point. Yeah, I'm going to
And
spin.
I thought that was a good way of framing it.
I want to spin hard back to because it's we do
let's
the
weave back.
Weave back too. So my teacher Judith Golden, I'm applying for this job for experimental color photography class at the graduate level, and this program is pretty much like nested into the Center for
I'm
Creative.
just trying to figure out how we even weaved away from that in the first place.
That was
Anyway,
me because
sorry.
I said I needed the terminal degree. They said you
Oh,
have
and then
to
you were
have a
talking about
terminal
the
degree.
president should
I
have
said,
a
shouldn't
terminal
the president
degree?
have a
Yeah,
terminal degree? And
Right.
really, what
Anyway,
I was
sorry.
thinking
Go
about
back to your experimental color class. Yeah.
this woman, okay, I'll go back. So, so it's nested in or sponsored by or like completely deeply integrated into the Center for Creative Photography, which was co-founded by Ansel Adams, who was probably the most famous adherent to and proponent of the fine photographic print.
Yeah.
Like perfectly exposed, the right tonal values, like on this scale. And then make it pristine and make it archival and mat it properly and present it in this way where it's like this object, this artifact. And my teacher said, the reason I'm picking you, Milo, is because you have zero respect for the fine print. You tear the photo, you glue it on, you sew it back together. There's like beeswax that looks like boogers, somewhat falling out of it. And like you're trying to make it. And I was like, that's interesting because that's just
You're blasting through the norms.
I feel like the fine print is so boring. Like I just find it like there's no history to it. There's no life. I don't
See, I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of why people wanted Trump, right?
I guess.
You're blasting through the norms.
Yeah, I'm like, let's shake it up. I mean, I don't know that
let's
I'm
shake it up.
There was a couple of
So it kind of goes against what you were saying about the terminal degree.
Well, no, I didn't get the job because I didn't have the terminal degree, and so
But they wanted to give you the job.
My professor did, and the university said no. And the reason was that right before she recommended me, the superintendent of a very large county school system that's like a 2-year program. What's that called? A community college. Yeah. There was a superintendent of this, probably the largest community college system in the country, Pima Community College System. The superintendent was found to have lied and said that he had a PhD, and he didn't. He had like a master's degree. And so they kind of did this, they shook the rug and they went through they said every single person has to have the terminal degree in their field, which was kind of arbitrary. Like it was like... It
is, yeah.
I mean, there's people who...
I mean, that's exactly why, you have this, like, you have people like, the Thiels and the Zuckerbergs of the world that like, you need to drop out of college to do anything real in the world, right? Because they sort of look at that kind of thing, and it does seem arbitrary, and it seems like an unreasonable constraint on people's sort of potential creativity and brilliance.
Yeah, it's for sure.
And there's a million stories of like people that built big things in this world that had no credentials to do it.
Right, it's true. I guess I never really. I would have gotten a master's degree or PhD if I thought there was value, and I just I would kind of weigh it. I would go like this, 6,
6, 7,
6, 7, and I would be like, and I would just think, I just don't see the value now. And I signed up for a program when I first arrived in Arizona in 1994. I applied to the program, and then in January, like there were like 11 grad students in the program, and 9 of them walked out. They just left because they were complaining about I don't know. I actually don't really know the details, but that kind of put an end to my, then I just moved on. I didn't try again. I didn't,
It's funny because, like it makes me think of here in the Bay Area, in the tech world, right? coming up through my career, I often ran into people who had MBAs or who were going, getting their MBA on the side, or people who were hiring where an MBA was sort of like, a plus or a credential. The MBA credential was desired, like it wasn't required for the job, but it was a plus, or sometimes it was required. And I just, because I remember thinking back when I just, landed on English as my major in college, after bouncing around to a few different majors, and ultimately chose the English because I thought, well, I think I even talked to a guidance or a counselor, college counselor at that point, and ended up in English because it was like, well, English is sort of a humanities degree that you can then go on to grad school for almost anything.
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's like if you're not sure what you want to do or be right now, like English is a good option because you can narrow it down later in graduate school. You can go into law or business or, teaching something, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the MBA, I remember thinking like, what's so attractive about the MBA that everybody wants this thing? And I started picking people's brains, like, what did you learn? And like, you've been doing this for a while. Like, do your MBA help you do this job better? Like, how is your degree contributing to how good you are at this? Because I would be doing the same job as somebody with an MBA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they all would be like, nah, you don't really learn anything you can't just learn here doing this work. In fact, you're kind of in this ivory tower sort of environment where you don't learn a lot of things that you need to learn when you're actually in the world, right? And I say, well, like, why? Like, what's this emphasis on the MBA? And like, it's just really this credential worship for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's just networking. Like, you go to the MBA programs and you meet people. And so, like, it's sort of like a fraternity, right? It's like when you go to that job interview, it's like, oh, you got your MBA there. I got my MBA there. My wife got her MBA there. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this. It's almost like a fraternity of MBAs, and it's the networking, and it's like, oh, I knew that guy at college. He started a huge company now. I'd love to work for that guy. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's that networks as well.
I've worked with a lot of people, like at Roche Diagnostics, there were a lot of, for instance, medical doctors who went back and got an MBA and came to work as like a product manager for Roche, right? And I asked them the same thing. And a friend of mine who was a doctor I said, why do they do that? And the guy goes, the secret is they got their medical degree and then they realized they hate patients. They hate working with people.
Yeah.
So they just want to get the hell out and like get paid to have medical knowledge, but they go get this MBA. And here's how like in the 80s there were a lot of mean lawyer jokes. Like people hated lawyers. They felt like lawyers were causing a lot of pain in society and like suing you for things.
Yeah. Lawyers are like the most hated. Yeah. There's lots of, right.
Well, in modern, like I feel like MBAs have become, and I'm projecting onto them a lot, but I feel like, for instance, like I always can picture, let's say when Delta Airlines says, let's try out a program where we use AI to maximize how much someone is willing to pay for a ticket.
Yeah.
And this MBA guy is the one that presents it. And he's like, let's do a pilot project. And like, look how much we squeezed every dime out of these people.
I think sometimes that gets narrowed down to economists. Economists get hated for that. Like they get blamed and hated for that kind of thing.
Right. But I picture.
Quote unquote economists. But it's MBAs. Yeah.
I picture that, like, for instance, that the corporation is, that the board is sort of put in this position where they're like, is our job to squeeze the customer until they fucking hate us? Because that's what's going to happen. I mean, like, I'm never going to even look at the Delta
MBAs will tell you your job is to squeeze the customer until they hate us, but not too much.
Well, that's okay.
Right. We're just trying to we're trying to optimize right on the cusp of the most hate we can generate without, like, the ideal to an MBA would be like, a monopoly where it's like they hate us, but they can't go anywhere else.
Exactly. That's a great example. Yeah, no, it's true. I remember I was working for a documentarian years ago as his graphic designer, and he was doing a documentary about the town of Bisbee, Arizona. Do you remember this town?
Yeah.
So it's a mining town.
I love Bisbee.
Copper mining town.
Yeah.
And in the early days, like after, the investors came in, they created one of those horrible sort of indentured servant towns where like an Irish immigrant would hear like, oh, come and make your fortune in Bisbee, Arizona. So they like get this ticket and the mine would pay them for them to come there. So they owed the mine like $1,500 and, a lot of money. And they had to work.
You could never get out of that hole.
Yeah. And the mine,
the
mine owned the market, the saloon, the brothel, the boarding house.
I mean, that shit still happens around the world.
By the end of the week, you ended up owing them money, and you couldn't even send any home, and you were trapped there because they wouldn't let you leave because they're like, you owe us for the ticket, and that's how I feel like that's what America's becoming. Like I feel like if you drive around in the suburbs of every city, there's these strip malls, and there's franchise owners have like, a Chipotle, and here's an anchor space for your thing. And it's becoming like there's 5 companies own the price of beef, so they don't have
there's like 5 companies that own everything, right? Yeah.
And then they naturally don't have to literally actively collude to raise the price.
Right.
They can just
and then the other thing is those companies aren't there, right? The corporate office is somewhere else. So none of those companies give a shit about the community that those offices are in, or the branches are in, or the franchises are in, right? Like, because it's just like, oh, that's just a source of some money for them in some corporate office somewhere. So they have no stake in the community where their footprint is.
Like that job I told you about last week that was doing training videos for Mr. Car Wash.
Yeah.
I told my wife about it, and I said, if we needed health insurance or something, I would take that job, right? Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh, did you hear what happened?" She goes, "Mr. Car Wash used to employ like 20 people to like dry your car off after it came out of the machine, and they would like help you and stuff. Now, like one person, the whole thing's automated, and one person stands there and just make sure that it's running."
Yeah, I mean, if like capital could have its way, none of us would have, like, this is why they love the idea of AI, because like the capitalists at the top of that pyramid, like we're just an inconvenience to them. Like workers are an inconvenience to them.
Yeah.
Like we're convenient as long as we're making money for them as productively and efficiently as possible. And anything else we do, like this is why like the Andreessens of the world had so much. This is why they all shifted to the right, because like there was a point where Google employees and Salesforce employees and stuff would like, there would like the child separation policy. There were like little ruptures inside these companies where people were like, hey, we shouldn't have private prisons as our customers. Like that's kind of gross. Like we're trying to be an ethical company, and these private prison companies are benefiting. And and the bosses are like, yeah, we hear you, right? But then they all met with each other and they were like, fuck these employees. Like, why are they making noise?
Right.
They're like, you know what I mean? So then you hear Andreessen on podcasts and stuff like pointing to that very dynamic and saying like, it's their job, employees, to just shut the fuck up and get the work done. Like, you know what I mean? So they would love to replace all those noisy rabble of employees with AI. They would love that. They would love to replace all of us with AI, because AI can work 24/7 without ever complaining about anything, right? So that's their dream.
I mean, remember when you invited Julie and I to get in that pilot project for Waymo? It was like you were like an early kind of pilot member, and we got in, and I remember being like afraid for 37 seconds.
Yeah.
And then it occurred to me that I was like, I don't have to make small talk with my Uber driver.
Yeah. I like that. I used to self-checkout at the grocery store. I mean, I maybe it's an introvert thing, but like, yeah.
And the other thing I thought was like, this guy never needs to take a smoking break, doesn't need to pee, doesn't feel dizzy when he drank too much the night before. Like this thing has way more sensors than a human. So at some point in the future, it's gonna be safer than a human. It just has to be.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
And
if
I
you're
mean,
putting-
and you so you kind of yeah, you can see like why the bosses, why the Andreessens of the world, they love to envision this future where they don't have these messy, noisy employees asking for stuff, demanding things.
so here's a question.
They think about the employees the way versus AI the way we just talked about Uber drivers versus the clean empty Waymo, right? Like that's the difference in their mind too, and it makes sense. Like you can see it, you can see the appeal in their mind.
So I'm going to take us down this little alley here, and I'm going to say like about I used to do illustration for the Utne Reader. Do you remember that magazine?
Yeah, I remember the Utne. Yeah.
And I used to call it the Reader's Digest for hipsters. Like it was like
Yeah.
it was like the aggregated, you know, it was like yeah. So so I did illustrations for it, and in one issue, there was a guy had written an essay, and I'm going to look it up, and I am going to put it in the notes because it was an early. He was a philosopher and economist who was, you know, thinking about universal basic income and that time in the future when pretty much everything is automated, and what are we going to do as a society? Kind of almost like Wall-E, like, you know, what in the future, what are we going to do? So, and his kind of, you know, his sort of whimsical conjecture was that we were going to end up needing to do a lot of service work for each other. Like, like we would need to go and interact, like give old people attention and talk to them, play games with them and stuff. But even that can be done with ChatGPT. Like you can have a conversation with a chatbot. So it's, you know, but we'd have to actually give each other physical touch because oxytocin is important.
Yeah, right.
Things like that, massage therapy. And
it kind of just depends how much people care about. Part of it depends on how much ultimately people care about just the end product versus the process or the motivation behind it, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like an AI can maybe talk to you, but it doesn't have real curiosity about you. It doesn't understand what psychological pain even is, right? Like if you're going through something, like it can talk to you,
and
right? And it might even say all the right words, but it's kind of like that Ted Chiang wrote that thing. Like, okay, when a child writes a fan letter to a celebrity, like, or whatever, or if you utter an apology to somebody, if you apologize to somebody for something, like, it doesn't matter what, like you're not saying original words to that other person. Like the apology that you are expressing, it's not elegantly composed. Like the other person's reception of it doesn't depend on the words you're using for that apology, right? It doesn't depend on how well you've articulated it even that much, right? Or that child's fan letter to a celebrity. It's the feeling behind it, right? And so like part of what when I think about what you're saying, human interaction, like performing services for each other, part of whether that will be the future depends on the sort of the demand for authenticity in a way, right?
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Maybe the service performed is just as good coming from an automated system, but like maybe in certain contexts, we just want to understand that there's a human motivation behind it somehow, kind of like an apology. Like an AI could apologize to you for something, but it wouldn't mean anything.
Right. So here's another the sidetrack to that alley deep dive is I think that Andrew Yang was a terrible messenger for universal basic income. He just was the wrong person.
Yeah.
But I do think he had a point that we need to talk about it. Like we need to.
Oh yeah,
talk
I mean,
about
I think a lot of people are talking about because they see that same future. Like they see the same future where if the promise, even if the best promises of AI come true, in terms of what it can do for the world and in the world, like the result of that, the side effect of that is a lot of people not having jobs. Right. And so like no matter what, there's sort of a jobs apocalypse in the best case scenario of AI.
Right.
And yeah, so there's tons of people talking about UBI in that context. When
I was up in Toronto, I was meeting with our old high school friends, and their daughter. I didn't get a chance to talk to her because she was out of town, but she's like a dyed-in-the-wool, according to them, a dyed-in-the-wool Marxist, like hardcore Marxist. And I said, like, oh, we would get along because I'm a unionist. And they said, oh, no, she hates unions. She feels like unions is like a Band-Aid on the problem. Like you're you're basically supporting the owners of means of production by just like letting them be less mean to you. You know,
unions are in a way leveraged in the direction of Marxism, trying to like just starting to turn the lever towards Marxism.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's like the best tool. It's like one of the best tools we have within the current system to sort of start turning the ship that way. Yeah.
So my question, what I wanted to sit with my, we'll call her honorary niece.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do was...
I'm totally down with her, by the way, in the Marxist thing. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but what I was so curious about is like when Karl Marx was writing his manifesto, there was no AI. Like the whole idea was like industrial people had to work in factories to make shit, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, so what would Karl Marx think or write about when you don't have to make anything in factories? Because, you know what I mean? That's a very sort of the opposite of what he was facing at the time when he wrote his manifesto. And I'd be so curious how he would analyze the coming AI revolution and the loss of workers. Like what would he envision for a society that doesn't need laborers? You know?
It doesn't need labor at all, to produce things. Yeah, totally. It's kind of interesting because you think of all the different times technology promised to reduce our labor, and it didn't, right? It didn't any of those times. No. And so I think there is there is a crowd of AI boosters who sort of like that's also what they envision. They, there is a segment of the pro AI crowd that's like, no, it's not going to really. It might create a temporary jobs apocalypse, but just like every other wave of technology, it's going to create a whole bunch of different new jobs, right? And I don't see that really this time, in a way, because each of those other inventions that people are talking about was kind of narrow in its scope of what it could do, whereas except maybe the internet, but even that, like what it could do versus. Like the internet actually did put a lot of middleman type jobs out of commission.
No, for sure.
Like a lot of agents and agencies and those like middlemen, brokers and agencies and stuff. But I mean, even that's pretty narrow, really.
Yeah, it's
pretty
true.
narrow compared to what AI could potentially do. I heard somebody compare it to the oil industry, which I thought was a pretty good oil-rich countries, and they were saying like AI. I think Prof G was talking about this. It was talking about like, and he was citing this guy and saying,
by the way, you could go to Halloween as Prof G.
I could, that'd be good. I wonder if people would recognize me.
Yeah, oil.
Yeah, I always, every year I come up with like, what would be the bald guy costume? What's a good bald guy costume? I was Walter White one year.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good one. Anyway, so, but like you can't do, that's too many years ago for that reference. But, yeah, so the oil industry comparison. I thought this was pretty interesting. So they were just saying like in oil-rich countries, people don't have like they don't have other parts of their economy working really. There's like markets and bazaars and those kinds of things. Like if you go to like these oil-rich countries in the Middle East, there's not a lot in terms of their world participation in an economy. It's a bunch of money that people get. That gets sort of trickles down to the population. And that there's like a few people who are really deeply connected to the oil industry who make serious bank from the oil. But then the rest of the country's infrastructure, labor, all that, like there's basically UBI in those countries.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And it doesn't work out that well for the most part. So like if we do a UBI type thing, we have to, like the point was like we should look at those countries as sort of a model of how it could not work great. And so like, how could we do better than that? I thought it was an interesting.
It is true, yeah.
An interesting analogy or metaphor or comparison, whatever. Comparable. That's the word I'm looking for.
Comparable. That's a good one. But anyway, I do think, for instance, like I think, by the way, let's celebrate that Mamdani is running. Zoran Mamdani is running double digits ahead of those idiots.
Yeah. And Graham Plattner, even after the Oppo came out in Maine, after Janet Mills entered the race, I don't have a huge amount against Janet Mills, except that she's like in her late 70s. She should retire. She's done a good job in some ways. But yeah, Graham Plattner up there, even after she entered the race and this Oppo research came out, like coincidentally at the same time, right? He's still like crushing her in the polls.
Oh, interesting. I haven't been following that race. I'll check it out. But
he's a really interesting guy.
So, but what I think is fascinating is that Mamdani is, I wrote this on your Substack that, I wrote in a thread with some friends about the fact that it's interesting that the Trump administration, from my perspective, seems to be unforced error rich. Like they're very interested, like they just, like throwing a grandmother on the parking lot, down on the parking lot and cuffing her face. Like no one likes that. Like why do it? Like why let someone, and then like tariffs.
Yeah,
like
it constantly forces people who support him to like have these moments where they are faced with this cognitive dissonance because they don't like it when they see it. So then they have to like deal with that cognitive, like if the most aggressive supporters of Trump have to figure out how to deal with that constant cognitive dissonance. So they either have to go, it didn't happen, somehow it's fake news, or they have to make up some scenario where she deserved it.
Right.
Or they have to somehow figure out how to rationalize it and justify it. Like, you know what I mean? Like they have to, or Biden did worse, right?
There's
a million ways they have to like really.
I don't think we'll ever win those people back, but I do think that like Trump has.
No, but I think we will because the cognitive dissonance says they don't like it when they see it. So at some root level, they don't like it. So they're trying to come up with something.
Oh, right. But what I mean is like right now,
yeah,
Zoram Mamdani is doing an affordability platform. That's just like it for affordability services that serve the common good of the city. And he's met with business leaders and billionaires and said, hey, you don't like the crime and the homelessness. Like you don't like people sleeping in tents on the street. Like fucking pony up, man. Like it's going to be like 1% of your income. Like what the hell? And so it's so practical. And yet I feel like the opposite is happening. The Trump administration, I think there has never been a president that had a lower approval rating in the history of the United States. I think I can make that statement. And they said, he's lower by several points than his lowest point in his first term, and he was had the lowest approval rating. Maybe the statistic is something like in your first year, because a lot of people have like a honeymoon period their first year, right? And this guy like face dived it. He was like a Hugo Chavez. Let's take the best, the best economy in South America.
But this is part of what's terrifying is they act like they don't care about any of that, right? I mean, like he keeps talking about the Insurrection Act and he's hinting at it. And this is a scary thing about Trump is like when he's I could invoke a certain act. I could you know what I mean? And he says it's sort of cheeky like that. But he's talking about the Insurrection Act, right?
Yeah.
Under the Insurrection Act, like he could cancel elections, shit like that.
You can deploy troops and
So he's dying to invoke the Insurrection Act. And that's the scary thing is like it is true that they are the worst and they're making themselves less popular by the day by all this dumb shit they're doing and all the destructive shit they're doing. But in a way that's actually even scarier because like no administration that thinks it cares about being reelected would behave like that. You know what I mean? So his answer is his solution seems to be we don't care how bad we are or how unpopular we continue to get. We're not going to course correct because we always have the Insurrection Act in our back pocket. We have Texas gerrymandering in our back pocket.
Yeah, Indiana.
They don't care about how unpopular they are. And that actually, in a way, to me, is scarier.
Right, and the Supreme Court has proven that they're just so corrupt and will give him whatever he wants.
Yeah, like every normal administration would be like, oh, we need to pay attention to the voters so that we can get reelected. But they are going hard, like stepping on the gas pedal so hard in the opposite direction of that. So like none of what their unpopularity is comforting to me at all.
I heard a historian though who studies fascism and dictators.
Yeah.
And they said it's unusual. I don't think that it's unusual. It's usually that people give the dictator power because they do populist things. Like if for instance, I always wondered, like I was expecting Trump to give us universal health care.
Yeah.
in the first term. I thought, because he was like, I'm the deal maker. I'm going to like go in there and beat the shit out of pharma because I don't owe them
concepts
anything.
of a plan. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought like if he wanted to be like this beloved dear leader, he could have given people something that they love.
No, but he's
And
too toxic.
He's toxic
for
and
that,
dumb. And
yeah.
he had, remember Infrastructure Week? It's like, we're going to work on
for the
infrastructure.
whole 4 years. Yeah.
Next week is Infrastructure Week. And then like I have concepts of a plan.
Yeah.
But it's like, so what's interesting is there have been in the past dictators who were very, very popular, and then they consolidated power under that mandate, right?
Yeah.
Then you have people like Allende in Chile who unfortunately won a three-way with 34% of the vote, and 66% of the country was like, or 56% of the country was like, hey, we didn't vote for this idiot, and he's making big changes, but we don't like,
Yeah.
So in this case, I mean, the guy did win the popular vote. He did win like 50%. He won, but I think his popularity among independents has plummeted by 29 points. And to me, the only way to really get out of not losing the midterms is to gerrymander the shit out of all these other states, and then to have the Insurrection Act invoked, because otherwise, once the
100%.
Democrats could impeach him right away.
But I think the fact that you can name those things as the paths that's the alarm bell right there.
Right.
That should be going off everywhere, because they are. So the difference is, like, the difference between this Trump term and the first one is Project 2025.
Right.
You essentially have the Heritage Foundation and a handful of people who wrote Project 2025, Russell Vogt, Stephen Miller, right? Tom Homan, all those guys. They're all appointed and fully unleashed, right? Doing the things that they were hoping to do. And they've done quite a bit of it, not maybe as much as they would have hoped by this point in 1 year, but like they've managed to do quite a bit of Project 2025 already. And maybe they're behind what they were hoping by 1 year, by 9 months, but it's frightening how much they've done.
It's true.
And they have the two parts of the triangle that they need to continue. They need to consolidate more military power, which they're working on. They're trying to, and it's not working very well, thankfully. Right? You have like Pete Hegseth and his dipshit like pep talk cheerleading thing, right? That if you were a general sitting in front of that, you would just be like, "What the actual fuck is this guy? Why is this guy the secretary?" Like, the collective, you pick any random person in that room, and they're just so far superior to anything Pete Hegseth is, right? So like, then you put them all in one room. So the only reason why they don't go along with Hegseth is ideological kind of alignment with Trump and.
Can I ask this though, because that's my example of a self-own or an unforced error. Like, what if he picked like General Flynn's brother, who was like who was like an absolute dyed-in-the-wool MAGA and evil and like part of 2025 to run the military? Like, he picks this idiot guy that no one respects, and it's hard to really get behind him. Like, that was to me, that was really dumb.
I think that was an error, right? I think that they know they need to consolidate some military leadership behind their agenda, because that's true power. That's state power, right? That's the hammer. And if without that, they can't kind of do their full, like, that's the Insurrection Act. That's the rifle in the hand of the Insurrection Act, is those guys, in a way, right?
Right.
And then the last pillar is kind of like the tech bros and Wall Street, tech and finance titans, right? So they have quite a bit of that in their sort of circle, and they've been doing pretty well with the tech side of it, for sure. But yeah, all that's the triangle, right? And that's the Project 2025 triangle, and I don't know, it's scary. It's scary. I think that they could, I don't think we should be like sort of thinking the Insurrection Act is this distant possibility. I think it's what they're aiming to do.
I agree. I do. I find it interesting. For instance, two things that happened this week that I think are interesting, kind of under the radar news.
Yeah.
One was there was a Night of the Long Knives, at the heads of the ICE offices, like 25 divisions across the country of ICE were just unceremoniously fired and replaced with like, a MAGA people.
Loyalists or whatever,
And what this article that I read said that a lot of the times we conflate two organizations as one. Like ICE has traditionally always gone after a list of people who were decided in a court, they were told to leave.
Yeah.
And that you no longer can apply for asylum and it's time to leave. And then they don't leave. And so the ICE knows their address and they sit outside their work and they kind of plan for a while and then they arrest the person unceremoniously and they send them off.
Yeah.
Deport them. The Border Patrol is run by this guy Bovino.
Yeah.
And the Border Patrol,
Bovino is in one of the regional Border Patrol.
Right. But I think they just made
Have
him
you
the
seen
head.
pictures of that guy, by the way?
No.
I mean,
I think he
was
just got promoted, though.
I saw him standing outside some courthouse or something. It was a photo of him, and they made it black and white. And he's got the Naziest haircut ever. And he was wearing this like long sort of trench coat. Dude looks like, I mean, like if he wanted to dress for Halloween as a Nazi, he looks like a Nazi. Like it was like somebody commented like he's dressed for the job he wants, but not necessarily for the job he has.
It's funny. Okay, so really
Anyway.
what I was hearing, this
but
is
that
like
was Bovino.
this is like Chisme, which is Corey Lewandowski, Christy Nome, and Bovino think that the ICE people were being too careful and not being, performative enough. So they just went through and decided like and fired a whole bunch of guys. So that's an interesting thing that I didn't realize, that a lot of the worst stuff in Chicago and Portland is being done by the Border Patrol, who normally don't go into cities and grab people out of restaurants. That's not their thing. So then the second thing I heard is that what's her name from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard, wrote a letter where she said, I would like you to consolidate all of the counterterrorism efforts under my control. And the FBI wrote a letter back that said, no fucking way, get the hell out. Like, that's our job. And I thought that was just interesting to watch the infighting. Like, I don't know what that means or who it's going on, but she's trying to grab more power. And they're saying, the Kash Patel is like, get the fuck out. That's my thing.
Yeah. If either one of those was a good actor, I would be a little more, but like it's going to end up in somebody's hands who's terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's
like
fine.
there's no, in that infighting, there's no like good side of it at all.
Right. It's not like,
So it'll get resolved in a way that fucking sucks somehow, right? The only hope you have is like, just like in the military in that room with Pete Hegseth, that there's enough sort of rank and file people that recognize the ineptitude and just outright cruelty and illegality happening, and just won't participate in it, right? Like there's already a few cases where people are resigning or being fired and stepping down for like just not for refusing to go along with but stepping aside and resigning and getting fired, like that's not exactly stopping the shit from rolling, right?
The admiral in charge of the Southern Command, who resigned. Like I heard someone say that, like, really, if someone gives you an illegal order in the military, if the commander in chief says go do this thing that's illegal, your only option is to resign. You have you can't say I'm not going to do it. You just have to resign.
Yeah. So you sort of have to hope that. I mean, then they replace you with somebody who will do the evil shit, right?
Yeah,
and so it's like, it's hard to sort of see, it's hard to know exactly where that ends and stops. I mean, and then same thing with, like you have these situations where the Texas National Guard is being sent to Oregon or Illinois and may end up somehow, and they have the opposite mandate of the local National Guard. So like Pritzker deploys his own National Guard, and then you have the Texas National Guard. And you just think of the ways that could play out, and none of them are great, right? Like you could have National Guard units fighting each other, like in actual gun battles.
Right.
Like that's the extreme version.
Civil War era stuff.
Yeah.
I heard Pritzker say two interesting things about the National Guard I didn't realize. One is, that there are, obviously each state has their own, but each National Guard is trained in a specific duty. Like there's some that are like experts in, after a hurricane, like creating like order and maybe redoing electric lines or something. There's some that are really good at pandemics.
Yeah.
And that if you take one just performatively from Texas and you send them to Chicago to like keep, like they're not trained in crowd control or like street, like, basically police work.
Yeah.
And so, so that's interesting. And he goes, so if something bad happens and the experts are not there or have been deployed and they're exhausted and they're sleeping, because they make them sleep on the fucking floor and shit.
Right.
So they're like, get really tired and they're eating rations. And so he also said that it's extremely expensive, that every governor knows if they need to deploy the National Guard themselves.
It's extremely expensive. So just think of the money that we're putting into all of this self-inflicted damage.
Yeah.
And the money we're paying for all this self-inflicted damage. And you have then this like lip service that's being paid to like, we need to beat China in the chip race, in the AI race. It's like, yeah, but you're spending all of our resources on like going after like, the mom who's a housekeeper whose kids are in a local school and she happens to, the mom happens to be undocumented. Like that's what we're sending federal troops after that mom at great expense. We're then throwing her into a detention center that costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, she was paying taxes. Like she became a net sort of revenue source in our society, just in pure money terms, to a huge cost.
Right.
Like in terms of rounding her up, detaining her, flying her to different states, putting these people on planes. They put them in a detention center for $200 a night or whatever that pays in squalid detention, but it still costs a lot.
Yeah.
And then, 6 months later, maybe she gets out because it was an unjust arrest in the first place. So that was all wasted money. And then she's, hopefully sues the government. So then there's a lawsuit, which also the government is paying to defend and maybe paying a settlement, right? So like we went from having this woman who's a housekeeper who's paying a minimal amount in some taxes and at least like sales tax and stuff, being a person in the world, to just a massive cost.
Right.
Massive cost on our country. To taxpayers.
No, it's
massive
really
cost.
Fortunate.
Not to mention all the other like psychological costs and moral costs and every other way it's costing our country. But dude, it's so crazy.
I think France should ask for the Statue of Liberty back.
Yeah, seriously.
Do you want to do first world problems?
Yeah, those are my first world problems. They're kind of old world, but yeah. Here we are again.
Those are your first world problems.
Yeah, all of that. All of that stuff.
All of that
I
stuff.
just said. Yeah, what's your first world problem?
What is my first world problem? I had a perfect one, and I can't remember what it is actually. So we might have to pull it. But I think something so. Oh, I know what it was. This is a good one. So my wife has this new Hyundai that's like, and it's much more modern. My car's 18 years old. It doesn't have any of these modern effects. And so this car, it has that thing where you're driving and it has those two green lines and it tries to keep you in the middle of the lane. Mm-hmm. So my first world problem is simply that the car, I end up wrestling with the steering wheel and the car is like, you're too far over to the right. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like I'm right in the middle. And the car's like,
that.
And I
or
just
if you try to change lanes without hitting the turn, without using your turn signal. It's like there's nobody around, so I'm just going to change lanes.
Totally.
And then the car's like fighting you.
Yeah. So that's the first world problem. And to counteract that, one thing I absolutely adore about this car is, when you're backing up in a very crowded parking lot, and you're totally blind and you just have to kind of back out and hope no one just clips the back of your car.
Yeah.
It has sensors that will go beep, 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 and like it knows when someone's coming, even if it can't see. It's amazing. I think that's so cool. I really like it.
It's cool. Yeah.
So that's a first world non-problem.
First world plus.
First world plus, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's it.
Cool. All right, my brother.
All right. Always good to talk to you, Satellite Haiku.
Likewise.
It's talk to you soon. All right.
Talk to you next week.
Satellites?
A satellite represents a journey, information gathering, this journey around the Earth.